Hey, this is Patrick Curtis, CEO and founder of Wall Street Oasis. Today we got a great chat with SJ. SJ joined us after he had just lost his position at a family office doing private equity investments. Listen to specifically what he had to do, how he ramped up his outreach, and eventually how he landed at A&M in a great consulting role. Enjoy. Okay, SJ, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today.
Hey, Patrick, thanks. Great to be here as well.
So it'd be awesome just if you could start out by giving the listeners short summary bio, just high level, 30 seconds, tell us where you're from and all that good stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm Canadian. I come from Canada, the Great White North. I now live in New York. I've got a background in accounting, wanted to transition over into finance, and then saw my career kind of going more towards the operational side. So maybe I'll start with those three buckets, and that's probably a good framework to lead the rest of the conversation if that works for
Yeah,
you.
that works. So like going back to like undergrad, I'm curious with the accounting degree, and you studied at Brock University, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And you were a 2015 grad?
Yes, that's correct.
And so tell me a little bit about that decision. Like, were you doing internships in high finance then, or was it like all accounting? I said, no, this is what I want to do. Tell me about that.
No, so good question. That was pretty much all accounting. So the program that I was in was a very rigorous accounting program. It's really well reputed back in Canada.
Hmm.
It's known for placing people in, you know, great positions in accounting. So when I was there, I was much more accounting focused, but we also had the opportunity to do a minor. And anytime I had an opportunity to minor, I was minoring in finance.
Got it.
So anything that was there. So my interest really started to kick off then.
Mhm.
And I really knew that I enjoyed it and I'd want to move some way into it. But I think when you're that young and at that age, and you may not necessarily know what you want to do, I think having an accounting and a finance degree is a pretty solid framework to getting yourself a
Yeah.
foot in the door and doing whatever you need to do from there.
So yeah, I mean that's probably why you got the master's right after in accounting and finance, right?
Correct. Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. That's
So
right.
2016, now you had the master's. Talk to me a little bit about the recruiting process for, I guess, the big four in that like, assurance, the tag group or whatever they call it. Talk to me a little bit about that whole like recruiting process. Was it all on campus? Was it just pretty streamlined and you didn't have to network and that was it and you got the job and just started full time right after graduation, or was there any kind of wrinkles there?
There was definitely networking that had to happen. So
Hmm.
our university had connections with all the big fours, so there
Yep.
was a lot of on-campus recruiting. But
Yep.
at the same time, whenever you go into any on-campus recruiting team, a lot of it is how you fit with the folks who you're meeting as well.
Yeah.
And I met a lot of the different firms. I just found that I gravitated towards EY the best. They were casual, they were really chill, they were also very smart, I could tell, and I saw myself being that way.
Yep.
Um, so not only did we do some on-campus recruiting, but we went downtown Toronto. We were there for conferences, getting to know everybody on the recruiting team, speaking to people and actual like associates and senior audit associates who were there, the
Hmm.
managers, the partners, things like that. So it's a streamlined process, but there is an element of networking that goes into it.
Were
And
you doing any of that networking on your own, like, or was it more like organized by Brock? Like,
that was more organized by Brock.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah.
Okay, so you hadn't like scaled up some crazy networking by that point at
No, no, no.
undergrad.
I had
Okay.
not. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So you got the job, obviously. Tell me about
Yes.
your time at E&Y a little bit. Walk us through kind of because you were in that you ended up getting promoted to manager, right? In the assurance
Yes.
group. So talk to me a little about like day to day, what that was like. I know it's audits and stuff like that, but yeah, talk to me about, that's a 4 year run. That's a long run. And it was
Yes.
4 years there. And then I think another 2 years in the transaction diligence group. I'd love to hear about like how you manage that transition internally, because even I think it's relevant, that advice, after being in a group for 4 years, like were they open to it? Talk to me about that and how you actually managed to pull that off.
Sure, sure, absolutely. So, let me start from the kind of the beginning, and I'll fast
Mhm.
forward through. But
Sure.
so I joined in 2016.
Mhm.
The group that I was in basically worked in non-financial services, so we did anything else under the sun, manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, whatever it may be.
Got it.
Started as a junior audit, a junior accountant, worked my way up the ranks. It was really good, very interesting at that time. I was learning a lot. And after I had made it my way to, after I made it through like the senior, kind of the senior accountant rank,
Mhm.
I started to get put on a lot more, call it like quote unquote complex audits, which were audits of like carve outs, audits of pre-M&A type audits, audits for companies that were going through an IPO on the Canadian stock or the TSX, the Toronto Stock Exchange.
Yep.
So I started to get a little bit more of that corporate finance feel
Oh,
while
cool.
I was working within the audit practice, and things were going well, but I started to naturally gravitate towards that. And I think
Hmm.
a lot of it was also because there was really one project at that time where I was working with the family office of one of the larger families in Canada,
Hmm.
and they had set up kind of a lower mid-market shop. I had the chance to really like integrate myself with their team because it was such a small team themselves, and they were kind enough to like speak to me about what they were doing in their day to day, and I really started to like it. So at that time, I knew I wanted to kind of move towards a different direction.
Hmm.
I spoke to my partners about it. They were very supportive. They understood where I was coming from. At the same time, having an accounting background with somewhat finance wasn't really the ideal position to be in. So I needed to kind of retool myself. And that's when I started to get into the CFA. So now I have my full CFA designation, but at that time I had my CFA level one.
Got it.
I have my master's in accounting and finance. So I kind of straddled both worlds.
Yeah.
And I wanted to move towards a direction where I could see myself being more exposed to the corporate finance world. And the next logical step to make from being an auditor is financial due diligence. And that's how I got into the financial due diligence space.
Yeah.
So with that all being said, I explored this around my senior accounting year. But then at that time, as you remember, COVID hit. So everything was put on pause. And I think that while I was there and while I was working, part of it was I got promoted to manager, but a lot of hiring stopped around the COVID time as well. So
Hmm.
I spent 4 years there, part of it COVID involved, but I think if I were to look back on it, as much as I had enjoyed my time, I would have probably wanted to move into the corporate finance section a little sooner just so that I can get my arms around it.
Hmm.
Um, Conversely, I get into it at the exact right time because that's when the mid-market, like the M&A boom happened in, basically 2021 or
Yeah,
20.
because you jumped October 2020 to that
Correct.
group, and that's like
Yeah.
when things started skyrocketing, right?
Correct.
In terms of
Exactly.
deal volume.
That's
For those of
right.
you that weren't around or were like too young to realize this, 20 like COVID first few years of COVID were just insane. Like 2020, 2021 was
Yeah.
just deal volume exploding.
Yes.
So yeah, talk to me a little bit about like was that crazy long hours or was it like, 70 hours a week and then you were there for almost full 2 years in that group. Talk to me
Yes.
about the transition out of that into the family office investing world and private equity world.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
So it was long hours. And at that time, because I mean, interest rates were near zero, if not zero, I think, if I
Yeah.
remember correctly.
They're
Uh,
like you're close to zero, yeah.
that's right. Everybody was buying or everybody was selling. Something was happening. It was long hours. It was really interesting because it was my first foray into the corporate finance world. And I think that's where I learned a lot about how corporate finance markets were structured. I
Yeah.
worked with investment bankers, I worked with private equity guys, I worked with strategics. It was a really good, like, generalist type experience to see everything through.
Yeah.
And as I started to
That
kind of
include like quality of earnings and stuff like that too, or
basically, yeah, quality
yeah,
of
okay.
earnings, quality of assets, net debt calculations, things like that, putting
Got
together
it.
the QB book. Exactly.
Perfect. Perfect.
So it was great because I learned a lot in a very short period of time, and I learned it literally, well, figuratively, drinking through a fire hose, especially in that environment.
Yeah.
Um, I think what happened ended up happening, if I look back at it, was I worked with so many kind of private equity companies that I started to see what they do a lot more. And I think that also kind of leaned on some of the conversations that I had back in Canada with that small family office as well. So, there started to be a little bit of a trend over here where thought to myself, okay, let me start to get involved, let me start to get more involved in like the finance and the operations of a business because numerically I could, rattle off QB books, no problem. I have the finance background behind it. I
Yeah.
wanted that operational piece. I wanted to get closer to the business. I continued to move forward. And I also still realized that at that time, I really only had CFA level one. This is maybe a
Did
strange
you
piece
have
of
your CPA or the CPA equivalent? Like, did you have the
yeah, I had the CPA, but I only had CFA level one. And then I
got it?
realized that, like, okay, well, if I wanted to be a little bit more competitive, I probably need to kind of fully finish off the CFA. So working 70 to 80 hours a week, I also was studying for my
Oh
CFA.
my gosh.
I lost a lot of hair. I think I grayed a
Hey, you
little
look
bit.
good now, man. You look good. Not as gray as
Thank
me. So
you.
I
Thank
know you're
you.
younger, but
Thank you. Yeah. But it was well worth it. I got my designation. I'm grateful to have it. I'm grateful for all the opportunities that I had at EY. And then I felt like I was in a position to be able to start recruiting. Uh, I was ambitious. I said, let me start to recruit for direct investment roles just to see what can happen. Because I have a CFA, I have my CPA, I have Big
yeah.
Four experience. It was all really, really good. Um, Started networking a lot, just meeting people,
Mhm.
speaking to people, trying to do everything I could, which was like connect with people directly through LinkedIn,
Yeah.
right?
And this
And
was this was kind of like early 2022, mid 2022, right before your,
correct,
I assume. Okay.
correct, yes,
And so
yes.
how many talks did you have to do? How many networking calls did like one-on-ones did you chat with before you like got an interview for a direct investing role? For a direct
Uh,
investing role? Because
yeah.
a lot of you're competing with a lot of bankers, I assume, too.
That's right.
Yeah.
I at that time I must have had at least 40 at
Wow.
least. And that's on the low I like that's on the low end of
Yeah, yeah,
things,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
it was 40 at that time. But just remember like the market was very different. Like people were looking to add people
hmm
to their
Investment
roster.
team. Yeah, to their investment team.
Correct.
So okay,
That's
so you ended up moving to a family office,
yep.
doing private equity deals and
Yes.
co-invests and all that stuff.
Yes.
Talk to me about your time there, and then yeah, talk to me about, obviously deal flow was crazy even into 2022, and then it started drying up. I think second half of 22, 23, right? Talk to
Correct.
me a little bit about what you saw on the ground looking at
Sure.
deals, and then yeah, and then talk to me then what happened next.
Sure, absolutely. So it was again very good. I consider myself fortunate and lucky to have even gotten that position because I realize now looking back at it that I'm a very non-traditional candidate and
Yeah,
that just speaks volumes. So I know that's what happened. I very much enjoyed learning about how to invest in businesses, how these large private equity companies look at their businesses. The role that I was in was more so like a passive co-invest type role and GP-led secondary role. So we weren't really taking active stakes, but I was still learning a lot about the
totally.
finance and the operations.
Yeah.
Now, at that time, we were doing a lot of deals, but then eventually the deal pipeline dried up.
hmm
And so this was around 2023 when the interest rates started to skyrocket again. Deal
Yeah.
market was dry. Um, was there at the company for about like a year and a half ish.
hmm
And eventually, when there was no deal to go around, there's no work to go around, we ended up being laid off at that time. So it was a tough period, but it also helped me kind of refocus and re-strategize. And I learned a lot during the whole process as well.
Yeah, and so I think you're going into this like direct family off like direct investing family office role coming out of EY. You're thinking probably like I landed my dream job. This is the dream job. It's
Correct.
like I'm doing all this stuff, and then boom, interest rates fly up, inflation takes off, and
Correct.
it's like suddenly you're like, okay, now I'm unemployed. What do I do? And so I think that's when you kind of reach out to us, or soon after that, or within a few
Yeah.
months. Talk to me a little bit about like why join the academy, and I think I know why because it was probably a trying time. You wanted maybe that focus, that regimented plan, but yeah, talk to me a little bit about what you were doing kind of before you joined us, and then kind of how you leveraged us.
Sure,
Your
absolutely.
next step.
So yeah, so when did it happen? I think it was towards the end of basically the end of 2023.
23 from what I was showing
Yeah,
on LinkedIn, yeah, and a 23, yeah,
right. So that's when I started to put feelers out. But again, I think that was like the bottom of the market
yeah, it
at
was
that
bad,
point. It was bad, right?
yeah,
It was really, really bad. And I think the one thing that just kept harping in my mind was the fact that I may not have had the skills necessary to be competitive for such a role, number one. But number two, it's not even just the technical skill behind it. It's also like the presentation skills. It's also the soft skills. It's also the people skills. So, and this is going to sound really crazy, but I was on LinkedIn and like I know you have the Wall Street Oasis. Like I'm subscribed to the page,
yeah, yeah.
and I saw the pop-up come up, join the academy, learn the skills necessary that you need to learn in order to land these roles. And I
Mhm.
thought to myself, maybe this is something that I need at this point in
Mhm.
life because it's a different skill set, number one, but number two, I'm also in a different country. Like, I now live in New York. I
Mhm.
started to see how how the worlds were different. And so I said, okay, well, I needed to be able to teach myself these skills. And the best way to do that is to go to people who are offering to teach those skills. And so therefore I put my name, I threw my, what's the phrase over there? Threw my name in the hat.
And then yeah, my ring in the my hat in the ring. My
Hat in the ring, hat in the ring. That's
hat.
right. Yeah, yeah, that's
Don't
right.
ask me. You actually, that's funny that my mother's Colombian and she always like mixes up those phrases. So I have these weird phrases in my head too from
Yeah,
hearing like cart before the horse, horse before the cart as it gets all messed up in our family.
that's right. That's right.
So
So,
okay, so you
yeah,
applied to Academy. I think it was like February, and then I think you joined March 24 cohort or something around there. Uh,
correct.
Talk to me. So you had obviously like once you knew you weren't going to have that role, you'd probably started networking, putting feelers out in New York, and what you wanted to stay in New
Yes.
York, right?
Yes, that's
Or
correct.
you
Yeah.
didn't want to go to Toronto or anything. And
Well,
so you were
I had a
open.
girlfriend in New York at the time,
Yeah.
so she said if I go back to Toronto, we're gonna have some issues. And I
Oh
told her,
gosh.
I'm staying here. I'm staying here. So
Okay. Okay. So you're like, I need to get a job in New
correct.
York. And so tell me a little bit
Correct.
about, what you did before Academy. Like, I assume you did some networking. Were you getting any interviews before that? I mean, I know it was a bad market. Did you have any like at banks or other PE funds, any family offices?
Well, so yes, so I started to network to people. Um, I was I was doing what I thought was the right approach and the right methodology, but nothing was sticking. And it was a really weird feeling because it's like, I've got so many years of experience, I would have thought that something should
You have the
stick.
CFA, you have the CPA. What's wrong?
Correct. What's going wrong? Yeah, what's wrong over here, right?
Yeah.
Am I like just I don't know, do I have a big wart on my forehead that no that I'm not seeing that everybody else is seeing? They're like, we don't need this guy or something. But yeah, that's the thing. Before I had joined the academy, I didn't I didn't know what I was doing wrong. And it was very interesting because you go through all these different processes and these interview processes, and some of them are rigorous and some of them are challenging, but I don't think anything is as rigorous or as challenging as even like IB or PE type roles.
Mhm.
And that is like that takes your interview, that needs a whole different skill set of interviewing. So before I joined the academy, I was I was talking to some people, but it wasn't as much as what I had done once I joined the academy. I was getting somewhat started in processes here or there, and again, it wasn't as much. It just felt very, it was like a reduced kind of a reduced output there.
Yeah.
The one other thing that I also did, which was from my time at the family office, I knew that I had started to like, as much as I knew about the finance piece, I had also started to gravitate towards being a little bit more operational.
Hmm.
And I was opening myself up to not just only finance type roles, but I was also opening myself up to operations type roles. And I think at that time, a lot of the not just the marketing, but a lot of what I was seeing from the academy was not just, you know, blend
Just
IB roles,
IB.
PE
Yeah,
roles.
just
It was also consulting as well. So I was like, okay, well, this is a very, very, very interesting piece for me. So, yes, so wasn't sticking too much. Once I joined the academy, I really think that's when things changed.
yeah. And so you basically came in, did the CB review, all the standard stuff.
Correct.
And then I assume your networking kind of just got ramped to a
Yeah.
crazy level.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah,
So
that's
talk to me
right.
about that in terms of like, because before you still had done a decent amount of networking to get into like the PE role, right? Like the family office role. Uh,
Correct.
was it similar, kind of like another 40 or 50 people you spoke with? And talk to me about some of the processes you entered. Because again, it was a pretty weak market then. And
Yes.
you ended up getting the role at well, I'll let you tell it. You tell me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So those that I did 40 to 50 back when it was a kind of an up market.
Yeah.
Once I joined the academy, once, we went through the whole CV review, which was greatly beneficial, first of all, because despite what I had previously, the new version of how my resume looks is something that just looks so much better and is so much more informative. And I think that was a very big piece in selling myself to
Hmm.
potential employers, 'cause that was a huge thing.
Yeah.
But on top of that, we also did like the networking piece, which is, ramping up networking. And while I only did, 30 to 40 for my previous role, I got up to I think 500 to 600 connection requests at a minimum.
Yeah.
And then of the 5 to 600 connection requests, I think maybe like 300 accepted. So I definitely got like plus 500 connections
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
on
You
LinkedIn, right?
get
But
past.
of those, there's a little bit, that's like a piece of attrition that happens, right? You
Yeah, it's a
send out
funnel.
600.
It's a
Correct.
funnel. Yeah.
Correct.
The
Exactly.
600 to 300 or 300 accepted your connection request. How many of those people did you get on a phone call? Like 50? Another 50 or so?
I was 60. Yeah.
60 or
Bingo.
so. Yeah.
60,
So
yeah.
so you almost like doubled your output on the call on the networking calls.
Correct.
Did any of those lead to interviews or processes or knowledge that you gained around the whole consulting kind of world? And because obviously it's a different kind of interview, right, than like pure finance or an IB. And I know you were open to potentially finance, you were open to operation or consulting operations role. Talk to me a little bit about like what those processes looked like.
Yep, absolutely. So at that time, so of the 60 people that I spoke with, I got into, I want to say, five processes at staggered times,
That's
basically.
great. That's great. And so
Right.
yeah, tell me like
Yeah.
all consulting or banking, consulting, everything.
So a bit of everything.
Yeah.
Some were banking, some were more PE oriented, some were consulting, right?
Yeah.
Um, and again, I remember those processes because they were like at that time, because it was a down market, the processes went probably a lot longer
Yeah.
than
Like we're not in
necessary.
a rush to hire.
Yeah, 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 exactly, exactly.
You can
So
be very picky right now.
that's right. So, how did those processes go? So, for some of the banking interviews that I had, immediate case study. That was one of the things. So, as an example, there is a large, and just to maintain confidentiality, I'll
Yeah.
just say, there's a large Canadian bank that was looking to add to their New York team.
Yeah.
I figured I am Canadian, I am in New York, I'm here. So right away, technicals, case study, like things with the team. At the same time, I was more so in a consulting role as well.
Mhm.
That was a little bit less on the technical side, but more on the behavioral and more on the just like fit. That was a big thing, right?
Yeah.
And then I was in one more consulting role, and it's been a while. Sorry, I'm just trying to piece everything
Yeah,
back
yeah,
together.
yeah, no. And so like did you make it to final rounds at the bank or was it first round done? What would you say in terms of
So I made it to I would say second round for the
Mhm.
bank,
Yeah.
right? With the PE side, same thing, second round. With the consulting, I made it to like the final rounds
Yeah.
of the processes.
Yeah.
But I also learned that like a lot of what we do and a lot of like the reason I accepted the role that I did now was just the people that were there. And I think that was also like a trend that I noticed throughout my career, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so I went to like the second round at those places. And then when I went through, I think I went through about 6 to 7 rounds for where I currently work at. Yeah, 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 yeah.
So
I
you want
want
to
to
tell
say
people where you ended up? Because I don't think if people know, or like, maybe they saw it on the cover, but like, yeah, you want to tell.
no, no, it's fine. So I work at A&M now.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying it. I'm really loving it. The people are great. Everyone works very hard, and they also are very like they're all reasonable people, which is what I really really enjoy about it, right?
They
And
put
the
you through
nature of the
six
work.
rounds. So was it more like a lot of fit behavioral, like 6 rounds, meaning like you talk to one person and week passes, you talk to another person, or was it like actual six official rounds?
It was like you talk to I talked to two people in 1 week, two people in another week, two
Got it.
people in one more week, and then two people like
Got it.
at
So
the
you were
end of
getting like there's like checkpoints all the way through, but that's a lot of rounds. That's tough.
yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Was it
So
heavier on like case or was it more like was it standard case interviews or was it more like operations focused? Like how would you look at this business? Was it like did you pull anything from like your CFA or CPA stuff or was it mostly like modeling, anything like that?
so no modeling
Yeah.
in these cases, but a lot of talking about my experience,
Hmm.
talking about like behaviorals, what I would do, some technical here and there, but I think the presumption was more the fact that, because I had almost 7 years of work experience under my belt, the technical wasn't necessarily
The
the
focus.
of the focus. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
can we work with this guy, right? So and I've been here since, so I've been here for about a year now.
Hmm.
I'm really, really enjoying it. I'm really liking what I do. I'm taking a much more operational view of those things, and like I'm realizing that's what's clicking in my mind as well. So
Hmm.
um, I'm just really grateful to be here and to continue to be in New York as well.
That's awesome, man. Well, congrats on a very successful outcome. I think I'm kind of looking back before we call it, if you had to like look back
Sure.
at your journey so far, any advice you would give to yourself, maybe back when you were getting an accounting major or something like that, like looking way back, or just advice maybe before the jump to the family office? Like, would you have done that same path, kind of looking back, or do you feel like, hey, I should have done it a different way? I think that's can always be insightful for people.
It's a good question, and I tend to think of myself as a deep thinker that way, and I've thought about both reasons. You could argue one way that,
Yeah.
I had to be on the path that I was on in order to be here, right?
Yes. Yes.
That's one train of thought, right?
Yeah.
But if I were to look back at it and just to see what else I could do, I think a lot of it was recognizing when you needed help and just acting on it. Because I think a lot of we get trapped in this thought process of, I got to do everything on my own or whatever it may be. But and I was doing that and I was moderately successful. But when you actually go out there, you speak to people, you sign up for sign up for the academy, just as an example, right? Like these are things that you're doing to better yourself. And I think if I had done those sooner in my career, I probably would have made smarter, more informed decisions. But at the same time, I'm I'm happy where I'm at now. So
Yeah.
maybe I had
It
to
all
go
worked
through
out. It
that.
all worked out in
It
the
all
end.
worked out. It all worked out. That's right. So maybe I had to go through that arc in order to be happy
Yeah, and
about
it's an
now.
interesting perspective. Like I always say, like the earlier you can join, the better, because then I feel like if you need to make a half step somewhere, like if you're starting
Yeah.
from like way non-target, super non-traditional, and it reminds me, I was talking to a prospective student today, and like just
Mhm.
like very far away from like having struggling, like getting his first job out of uni was actually UK, studied in the UK,
Yeah.
engineer,
Yeah.
like really sharp, but from
Right.
Trinidad and Tobago, and he was like, "Can I go to the US?" I'm like, "Visa's an issue, man. Like a visa's a big problem. Like
Yeah.
you should look to the UK. That's where you studied." And he's talking banking. I'm like, "How about we get you into finance first?"
That's right. Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so like I think it's often like people want to reach for like this huge thing, but like what you don't realize is like there's steps, there's also intermediate steps you can make that are
Yes. Yeah.
improving yourself. And the key isn't like if you reach high finance right away, the key is like every day or every week, are you putting in a little bit of effort or a little bit of work to improve yourself, to get yourself closer to your end goal. Because the
Yes.
journey of like that improvement is really what we try to focus on. And that's why we call our one of our pillars practice makes better, not perfect,
Yeah. That's
because
right.
everyone sometimes we have people scoring 10th percentile, first percentile, just by definition. Some of them are scoring really low on the
Right.
mocks that we give them. And it's like, it's okay. You're not going to land an IB with these scores, but we know like the goal is like, are we getting better? And that's like, I almost enjoy the students in the story that are like, we're more non-traditional or like the ones that are scoring really low
Yeah.
because the amount of value you just add to them is just like massive, right?
Yeah.
Versus the student who's already like just perfecting things around the edges are like, I really want to go Goldman TMT instead of Centerview or whatever. I'm like, come on, man. I'm
That's
like,
right.
okay, we can help you, but like, yeah, it's just funny, like in terms of how people think. Like we have people joining that already have jobs in banking just because they want to get like the extra level. And so like, and then we have people that are like on the complete opposite of the spectrum. So I think your perspective of like, hey, well, I wouldn't be here and I'm happy is a great one to have. And I think
Right.
I wish more people would take that perspective because like we don't know if you would have like if you had joined us earlier, maybe you would have gone into a more intense high finance career earlier
Yep.
and like burnt out.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like who knows?
Totally.
Like there's those stories too. So I think being appreciative for what you have is always a good lesson.
That's right. That's right. I completely agree with you.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. Of course, stay in touch. Let us know if we can be helpful kind of going forward.
Yes, absolutely, Patrick.
Awesome.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Nish.
so much.